The boomers stole our futures. The boomers stole our futures. You know, guys, I had put together this video as an epic video for you, and then I decided, damn, I cannot release this here. There was just so much profanity and anger and fury directed at the specific group of individuals that I just couldn't put it out. So you guys can go and check that out on Substacks. But yeah, guys, today we're discussing how the boomers stole our future and, what we can really do about it. I don't know. It's just an upsetting reality that we're in, but we have to talk about it. Watch it as the video to fully understand how and why the boomers stole our futures and what we can really do about it. And now let's just go ahead and jump into the very first video.
Our eye on America as more people struggle to make ends meet. A startling number of those newly homeless are baby boomers. Tonight, CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti takes a look at why older people are now one of the fastest growing groups living on the streets.
So this is where you all sleep at night?
Yes, this is our sleeping quarters.
65-year-old Maria Negrete, her daughter and granddaughter live in their car on the streets of San Diego
Things to shower.
after losing their jobs and getting evicted from their apartment.
You have been looking for work. Your daughter has been looking for work. How frustrating has that been for you?
It's hard because as much as we try, we feel that the system pushes you to the position that we are.
Do you see a way off the streets back into a home?
No, especially with everything so expensive, like gas, the rent, everything. And that's heartbreaking for me.
I want to just kind of point this out. So, guys, this boomer is in her 60s, and she did not plan ahead for the future. The boomers were born into the very best economy. They had guys, everything was handed to them. The world was handed to these just very, very bad apples. And what did they do with it? They threw it all away. All right? They partied for 50 years, 60 years. They robbed the economy. They stole everything from us. And they left us with nothing. They stole our futures while we were in diapers. And now they can't pay their bills. These are some really bad people. They did not plan for the future. And I'm telling you, this is what they do. They turn around and blame the boogeyman. Oh, it's the boogeyman why we didn't save. It's our parents why we didn't save. Guys, this is what I gave up on them entirely. Because, like the whole blaming your parents thing. Oh, no, what led me to stop blaming my parents was when I started seeing these people blaming their parents who had been gone for decades and fabricating nonsense like, oh, it's people from the past. It's the boogeyman from the past. It's the billionaires that lived 100 years ago. Like, what are you talking about? They're not the reason why you didn't save for retirement. They're not the reason why you didn't plan ahead. They're not the reasons why you guys pillaged the economy. They have nothing to do with this. You guys deliberately chose to make these decisions. You guys deliberately chose not to plan ahead. You guys chose this. These are some truly bad apples.
Entitled stupid, selfish, dumb, crazy, lost, ignorant, spoiled, bad, sensitive, snowflake, annoying, fucked, and on and on and on.
That's how millennial and Gen Zers say they're routinely described, according to SUNY psychologist Carla Vermeulen, author of the new book, Generation Disaster, Coming of Age Post 9/11. Who can blame them for being pissed off?
One of the quotes that I used was someone saying, I feel like our generation has been handed a bill for a party we didn't get to attend. So this is really one of the main sources of anger at older generations, at boomers in particular.
Younger Americans have been raised to believe that their leaders lie about everything, that the entire financial system existed to bail out big banks when they crashed the economy.
I have a chapter in the book called Lockdown Drills in Kindergarten. They literally have had these drills the same way that we had fire drills.
Vermeulen's book looks specifically at people born between 1990 and 2001, but her conclusions are broadly relevant to folks under 40 or so. She says their fears are mostly overhyped. Our focus on statistically rare events such as school shootings have jacked depression, anxiety, and resentment through the roof.
The psychological effect of participating in these drills for young kids and, kids writing wills to their parents and, thinking they're literally going to die. And It's security theater. The disproportionate.
Let me make this. It sounds like she's trying to do a cleanup job for the boomers. The boomers handed us this terrible world filled with fear and anxiety. And guys, when we were coming around, listen, they talked so much crap about Gen X in the 80s. Okay. Oh, don't do drugs, kids. Guys, back in the 90s, we used to have this commercial with this white girl, and she would grab a pan, and she'd say, "This is your brain on drugs," and she'd start smashing the pan all over the place and breaking an egg. And then by the time she was done, everything was messy in the kitchen. And she's like, "You have any more answers?" And I'm thinking to myself, sis, I'm 13. What's your problem, sis? What's your problem? I don't have drug money. I barely have milk money. All right. My good for nothing boomer parents, they only gave me 50 cents to get by for the entire week. And they told me don't ask for any more. All right. Those were the baby boomers. They were some of the they were so shady. They are some of the shadiest people on the face of this earth. Okay. I am telling you guys, these people were unbelievable. I had a job by the time I was, and I know it's nothing special. By the time I was around 17, I had a normal job, but I had started working before doing that. Before 17, I had already started working, had different little jobs here and there, and I was so grateful for it. But, and I had to work hard. The boomers, everything was handed to them. They were such mean people, such mean-spirited, such evil people. They had no God inside of them, even though all they ever preached was love and kindness. They were bad people.
I've noticed, but people are getting really, really old lately. Life expectancy has been going steadily up for like decades, for centuries now, really. All of these old people are not necessarily living the lives that they thought that they would live at this point. We currently have a record number of over 50s in the UK that are working. We have a situation where around 1 in 4 US adults over 50 says that they're never going to retire. But I want us to focus on a different place today, Japan. Japan is an incredibly interesting case study when you think of this phenomenon of elderly poverty and how this is driving a wave of crime amongst the elderly as well.
A wave of crime amongst the elderly. So the boomers are committing crimes in Japan. All right, spoiler alert. And by the way, guys, the video where, I just went completely in on the boomers, there's, go and check out my Substack. My Substack is actually linked in the description. You can go there to get insights on join my Substacks for my insights on world events, wealth building tips, practical living advice, social issues, and you can also get a free copy of my digital nomad blueprint, link in the description. And guys, I'm going to be sending out the you'll have access to my the episode that I made. The episode I made about the boomers on my Substack, so I'm going to put that over there. Because guys, there's a lot of profanity in that episode. There was a lot of profanity in there. I just really unleashed a lot of the things that were in my heart about the baby boomers. I had so much just grief piled up in there, and I just unleashed in that episode. All right, so that's going to be over on my Substacks exclusively, because I don't think that it's a good idea to drop it here. So my Substacks link description of video. You can go check that out and enjoy that. Because, the boomers, they just brought out the absolute worst in me. And they've all brought out, just like they brought out the absolute worst in society and humanity.
A significant number of elderly people who are getting arrested and put in prison on purpose in order to avoid this combo of being broke and alone in old age. It's like a really interesting case study, even if you're not from there, because they actually have a lot of problems that are worldwide problems, but just dialed up to 11. Japan currently has the oldest population in the world by percentage. Almost 30% of the population is over the age of 65, and something like 1 in 10 are over the age of 80. If you're in a wealthier country, the aging population is almost certainly a problem. Similarly, they have an insane level of government debt. Japan's debt to GDP ratio is the second highest in the world, just behind Sudan. And I don't know how much you know about Sudan, but they're currently in the middle of a civil war. So they've kind of got a good reason to be down bad. Most countries are running just incredibly high levels of national debt, and it's eventually going to become a problem for a lot of places. But because it's not a problem now, we kind of ignore it. I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I had this idea of Japan as being like in the future. I think I just watched too much anime, and I had this idea that Japan was just living on another level to everywhere else. In a sense, I was right that Japan is living in the future. They're just living in the worst possible timeline of the future. Despite the fact that their prison population has actually steadily been shrinking, the percentage of elderly inmates has actually been rising. The people who are left in jail are older and older and older. The crime rate amongst the elderly has actually quadrupled in the last few decades. This isn't just a Japanese problem though. And in America, you can see that people who were 55 or older made up around 3% of the US prison population in 1991. But 30 years later in 2021, they accounted for 15%. That's a 500% increase, right, in the elderly prison population. And it's resulting in this phenomenon where prisons are turning into de facto nursing homes, having to fulfill a societal need that isn't being fulfilled by the social care system. Some prisoners are now actually expected as part of their work duties to act as care workers and to take care of other prisoners who are elderly and unable to take care of themselves. Japan is the canary in the coal mine, a really good preview of what might happen in a lot of different countries over the world. What makes this even more interesting is that Japan's criminal system has a 99% conviction rate. And you would think that this would act as a severe deterrent, especially in the elderly who typically commit fewer crimes than the rest of the population. Crime is one of those things that people usually age out of. But if we look at the specific crimes that the elderly are committing, you'll notice that shoplifting is an extremely common crime for the elderly, and it seems to be the crime that they choose to commit the most. If you commit shoplifting, you're basically guaranteed to go to prison, and if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a refuge, then you can find it. Bloomberg wrote a piece on this phenomenon of the elderly getting arrested on purpose, and they interviewed a number of elderly women who had chosen to check in to prisons. And this is what they had to say. So these are a few of the people that were interviewed. Mrs. A, who stole some clothing and was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months in jail. Mrs. T, age 80, who stole cod roe, some fish, and a frying pan and was sentenced to 2.5 years. And Mrs. N, who stole a paperback, some croquettes, and a hand fan and was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months in jail. Granted, some of these people were like repeat offenders, but this definitely still looks like a disproportionate punishment for these crimes, right? This first testimonial is from Mrs. K, age 74 years old. She stole Coca-Cola and orange juice. This was her third term in prison. The sentence wasn't disclosed, and she has a son and a daughter. This is what she says about her choice to be in prison. I was living on welfare. It was hard. When I'm released, I will manage to live with 1,000 yen, $9 a day. I don't have anything to look forward to outside. This is a pretty on-the-nose testimonial about the experience of going to jail and why this woman at age 74 has decided to deliberately check into a prison effectively. I want to read a longer one next.
I just kind of want to point out, guys, that so this is happening in the United States as well. A lot of the boomers, they're flat broke. They don't have any money, you know, because of the bad decisions that they've made. They've lived these terrible spendthrift lives. You know, it was one big party. It was like boom, 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 and you know they kept on messing around. It was, guys, it was a big party, man, one big party, and then they just woke up one day and realized that they were old and they were broke, and some of them, you know, they basically started rushing to, you know, save money and do something. But the vast majority of them, they just kept partying. It's unbelievable. It is truly unbelievable what these guys did. And now they have nothing to really show for it. You know, now they have nothing to really show for it. And they've put themselves in this situation where they expect society to bail them out, which is crazy. You know, but then again, you have to remember, this is a group of people who lived off society for decades. And by the way, today's video came from Fads. His channel will be linked in the description, so you can go and check him out, support his content. He's the guy that you were just watching. I mean, it's very, very sad what has happened here. It's very sad what's happened here, but it's understandable because boomers were handed the best economy and they were given everything. This is what happens when you give people everything, like Gen Z. They basically become a bunch of little narcissists. Just like I say that Gen Zers are a bunch of bad muffins, the baby boomers are a bunch of bad apples. 100% a bunch of bad apples. They don't. It's like they act like they don't know right from wrong, and it's a result of being coddled by their parents. Their parents handed them way too much, guys. There was a massive wealth transfer that happened with their parents. We never talk about it either. The great wealth transfer from the silent generation and the greatest generation over to the baby boomers. They took their parents' homes, their cars, gold, silver, everything, back tons of money went from the boomers to their parents. I know this. I know this happened with my own parents. My parents, when my parents, they don't talk about it. They've never talked about it. They're very evil people. They're very, very evil people. I'm in my 40s now, and I still have no idea really about what my parents, everything they inherited, but I know they inherited some stuff, and it's insane. And the thing about the boomers is that a lot of these people, like, it's some places, like, these people even have ancestral homes. Like in other countries, they inherit homes and all kinds of stuff. Even in the U.S. that occurred. All of that, we're not getting any of that. And thankfully, as Gen X, as people raised in the Gen X era, we learned, don't expect anything from anyone. If you're going to have anything, you're going to have to work hard for it. The problem with the boomers is that these people are now, after burning through everything, they're not going to look to their kids to come and rescue them as they're on their way to hell. And it's a very, very sad reality that these people have put us in. And what are our alternatives? How are we going to handle it? It's a hard one, guys. Basically, you're just going to have to work and save hard and plan ahead. Do not go out and purchase these $1 million homes or $500,000 homes. People think I'm dumb for saying it. Listen to me. The boomers, when they were growing up, they could purchase a home with a year, sometimes even 1 year's salary or 2 years' salary. It was normal for the silent generation and greatest generation to purchase a home with just 1 year's salary. What ended up happening with these 30-year mortgages is that they went and took out these 30-year mortgages, which allowed them to spread out payments even further. So they basically ended up spending, a house ended up becoming even more cheaper. So as to where, like, a millennial or a Gen Xer today would say, holy cow, I can purchase a home for, let's say, $100,000 or $150,000, and my salary is $50,000. So, I'm just going to work my butt off, and I'll pay it off in a couple of years. And that's just that would be the average salary for someone with no college degree. So if you had a college degree back then, okay, so if you had a college degree back in the 90s, you'd be making more than $50,000 a year. Real, more or less. You'd be getting somewhere in that range. But my father was making 60,000 plus without a college degree in the 1992. But it's in the case of the boomers. I mean, you could make 50K pretty easy back then, with a little education, and are just working a couple of jobs. So for someone our age, we'd go, we'd knocked it out. We'd knocked it out within a couple of years. We'd purchase a house and we'd just pay off that mortgage very, very quickly. Not the boomers. They took out these 30-year mortgages and they just kept on sucking the equity out of the properties. And that's how we ended up with sky-high equity, sky-high prices, where these houses that were purchased 20, 30 years ago are now selling for $1 million in places like New York and San Diego. These are some really horrible people. They stole our futures. There's no one listen to me, no one in their right mind should be purchasing any of these houses. You have to be a complete idiot to think that I'm going to go and buy a house. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. If you're making $50,000 a year or even $100,000 a year, and you're like, well, I'm going to go take this money and put it on a property, you're a fool. You're a fool. I'm going to go buy a $700,000 property or $1 million property. You're an idiot. I guarantee you that you are a flipping idiot. Do not waste your money on that. Get a piece of land, buy something like, somewhere in the Midwest, and put a boxable on it, these modular homes, but do not waste your money on the boomers garbage, putting yourself in lifelong debt for the junk of these junkies. Okay? It's a horrible decision. Do not do it under any circumstance. Do not go and spend the rest of your life trying to pay for the garbage of these jokers. It's a terrible mistake to make. They put themselves in this position where they're ending up homeless. Let them sort it out for themselves. You can see in Japan, a lot of them would rather go to jail, go to prison, than to stay on the streets. And then they actually have people in prison who are dedicated to taking care of them. Guys, they're not going to do well. They think that they're going to make it. They're not going to do well. They're out here threatening us. Oh, you're like, I have boomers threatening me. Like, oh, we don't all have one foot in the grave, and we have power. We're very powerful. All right. And we're going to teach you a lesson. You're going to learn. I'm thinking to myself, oh, really? This is what you're doing? Yeah, this is going to justify, or rather, this is going to really counter my argument of just how bad you guys are and all the evil that you've done in society, right? Like, they think threatening the people that would ultimately take care of them, that's going to settle it. Like, these people, they're so narcissistic. They didn't plan for the future, and they really seem to think that they're gonna slide into old age comfortably. Half of them don't have any savings. Half of the baby boomers have zero savings. Okay, and from those that do, only 30% have around $100,000 or less. All right, 100K. They cannot. The average boomer spends $53,000 a year. Okay, so they don't even have enough. That money will only last them 2 years in this economy, and then what? They're on the street. And they think that Social Security is going to take care of them. Social Security cannot take care of them. All right, these little $1,000 to $1,700 checks per month. Most of them are not going to get big fat Social Security checks. Not as big as you think. They cannot live off Social Security. We know that for a fact because you have a lot of them who are in their 70s who have to go back to work now, working at Walmart as door greeters, and they're quarreling and hollering and screaming, as though it's the country's fault for their poor planning. And it's like they stole our futures. And notice, they don't care about us. They're not worried one bit about millennials, about Gen X, about Gen Z. They're saying that Gen Z is going to have to pay higher taxes to subsidize them going to the future. They've actually said it, but then they're like, it's going to be okay. Gen Z will be okay. Oh, God. These people are heartless and cruel. These people are such cruel people. That's why, these guys are saying, when you come into the world rich, leave the world poor. And that's the reality of many baby boomers. They are going to leave the world poor. All right. They were born during the best time, and they're gonna leave the world during one of the worst times. They're gonna leave the world poor, because they don't know, because they it was one big party for them. And the saddest thing is that they're going to blame their children. They're going to blame Gen X. They're going to blame the state, as if they weren't the ones voting for these policies. They're going to call upon God and act like God, why is this happening? While everyone else is basically torched. Let's be realistic. Like, Gen Z is not built for this. My problem with Gen Z is just how nasty they are. Their bad behavior. There's just so much for, like, the boomers. The center of their lives is money. They're very crooked. They'll steal from you. They're shifty. These are just some of my griefs with Gen Z. But I completely agree that they haven't really. Their futures are not so bright. The boomers definitely stole their futures, just like they stole every generation that came after them. They stole everything. They pillaged everything. They're bad people. So Gen Z was not raised to be employees either. And the truth is that they don't really have the skill sets like other generations. Their ability to read, write, use critical thinking, it's not the same. All the employers know that a college degree or a high school diploma from a Gen Zer is not equivalent to a college degree or a high school diploma from a generation that came before them, because many of them got those degrees during the events of 2020 or after the events of 2020. And as a result, they didn't really go through the rigor that others did. They didn't have to take the SATs. They didn't have exit exams. A lot of them started when they try to read. And it's not like my stuttering. I'm just a natural stutterer. No. They stutter because they can't sound it out. They didn't have they didn't use phonetics when they were growing up. So they really don't know I don't even know how these people are capable of reading at all. Actually, I do. A lot of them use dictation. So, because they were taught how to use dictation on tablets and other devices. So they use dictation. All right, so it basically reads out loud for them, but that's gonna mess up their lives. That's why they have Audible. They like to use Audible when they have to listen to read a book, because they'll read it for them, because these kids can't read. These kids can't read, And like I said, Gen Alpha will be a large prison population. We already know that those people don't have much of a future at all. I mean, it's just a reality. But like I said, guys, the video that I made before, the podcast, whatever you want to call it, I made before, where I just basically really went into the boomers, and there's a lot of profanity in there. That's going to be linked in the description. That's on my Substack. That's going to be on my Substack. So my Substack is pretty awesome. Go over there. Go check it out. Download that. Enjoy that. Well, play that. It's going to be very good. Very, very good. So you can find that over there. But yeah, guys, the future for the boomers is going to be a lot of poverty, destitution, hardship, misery, pain, suffering. They're going to, a lot of them are going to be living in the streets, living in shelters, living in their cars, and eventually they'll lose their cars because they can't keep making those payments. If they have payments, or they won't be able to make the car insurance, they'll get arrested because they don't have any insurance. But they'll be living on the streets, living in the woods. It's not going to be pretty for them. They're going to have, they had it good. They came into the world rich, and they're going to leave the world poor, and it serves them right. Let me know what you guys think regarding all of this. Let me know if you guys agree. The boomers stole our futures. There's some real bad people, some real bad apples, just like Gen Z are bad muffins. We're dealing with some real rotten apples with the boomers. Let me know your thoughts. We'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWM and walking away. And cheers.